Hello everybody and welcome back to Blue Jays Today. We're your boys. We always got something to say about the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host Adam Peddle.
And I'm your host Nicholas Blaylock. And today, folks, we're going to be looking at that upcoming Toronto Blue Jays season. Really looking at the expectations and then the realities, right? What is the ceiling for this Toronto Blue Jays season? What is the floor? We're going to break all of that down and more after what has been a fatiguing offseason, guys. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Please hit the like and smash the subscribe button. So let's just start out by kind of just looking at this offseason and I guess just acknowledging the fact that it didn't really go necessarily the way that we all intended it. I mean, there is still Cody Bellinger on the board and Matt Chapman and whatever. But when we're making this video, I think that we're all assuming we're done.
Yeah, we're done. And yeah, you're right. It didn't go like we expected. And we've kind of graded this offseason in previous podcasts. And I'd give it a solid D+.
Right.
You know what I mean? Unless they were going out and getting some other kind of guy. It just feels like a D+ kind of year. Really kind of trusting the guys that they have. I mean, not necessarily that they're going to be a bad team, right? Because they could obviously still go out there and compete for the AL East. You know, there is a chance out there. We are projected to be amongst the mix, right? And also make playoffs and maybe do some sort of push deep run, like very small chance.
Yeah.
But there is a chance, right? And just because we had a bad offseason doesn't mean it's the end of that. But what does that mean now for the Toronto Blue Jays?
Yeah.
Like, what are we expecting, bro?
Well, last year, Toronto Blue Jays, they won 89 games, which is good, but not necessarily where we want it to be. And I think a key statistic for us, we were talking about this on a recent live stream, and it really put in perspective this entire offseason, but it was looking at the players that we lost and looking at the players that we brought in. And again, this does not factor in the pre-existing players like Guerrero and like Manoah and like Bo Bichette and all these guys who were on the team last year and who could potentially have better years this upcoming season. But we lost 6 WAR in total. 6 WAR from Matt Chapman, from Brandon Belt, from Jordan Hicks, right?
Yeah.
6 WAR collectively. And I think that when you're walking in, you kind of need to factor that into what your expectation for this team might be. Not necessarily saying that we're just automatically going to drop down to 83 wins, but I do think it's very intriguing that Fangraphs actually literally has the Toronto Blue Jays projected for 83 wins, which is exactly 6 WAR difference from last season to this season. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that is pretty funny. You nailed it on the head with the whole 6 WAR thing. But, you know, they're putting into factor a number of things. Obviously, how they played last year, how they're projected all these players to play in the upcoming year. But we all know every baseball season is a completely different season.
Totally,
where there's different stories and different guys performing at their ceilings, at their floors. So there's a number of factors that are going to play into it. And obviously, we all know that this is probably not what it's going to look like when it's all said and done.
I hope not.
I hope not, or else it's going to be a very depressing season.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be very sad watching it as a Toronto Blue Jays fan. But yeah, so I think there's going to be a lot of different expectations for this upcoming year. I mean, this team itself has got quite a high ceiling, in my opinion. And I do think they got quite a low floor, right? If in this high ceiling scenario, if you don't really get a good bounce back from George Springer at the top part of your lineup, if you're not going to get an MVP quality player from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in that top part of the lineup as well, and if the pitching isn't the same, you know, then you're going to hit like a really low floor. But if all that does happen,
sure,
you could win 93, 94. You could be competing for the AL East, right? For the title. I really do think there's a big swing, and it all depends on those guys.
Yeah, and I do think that the biggest factor here is the hitting for sure. And we really hammered that point home all off season. But as far as range of outcomes go, I don't really see this Toronto Blue Jays pitching staff barring any serious injuries, right? Because you can never count for that, right? If somebody has to get Tommy John, then somebody needs to get Tommy John, and that just fucking sucks. But assuming that everybody is predominantly healthy for the whole year, I don't see that pitching staff, you know, automatically becoming a bottom half unit.
No,
like I think that at minimum, you're still going to be looking at a top 15, probably closer to like a top 10 unit in the entire MLB. And that's just because it is so deep. And they also brought in Yariel Rodriguez. Manoah should be in for a bounce back. And you got Ricky Tiedemann waiting in the wings if you have to do that. So I think that the pitching unit there, the range of outcomes is pretty good. It does feel like you're going to live and die here with that Toronto Blue Jays lineup. And that's where that ceiling and that's where that floor comes in. And so for expectations, as far as where we are really projecting this team, I think I am expecting them to bounce back, and I think that they need to bounce back if you want to see this team and this unit, potentially some of those guys get extended and for this window to last longer. But I think a realistic expectation for me is, from what you've done in the offseason, you go to the wild card series again, and then we don't know, right?
Yeah,
and that's where it kind of like the shit hits the fan, because we still haven't seen that postseason success.
Yeah, like, to comment on your expectation of like that they should bounce back, I think that they should bounce back because that's what Ross Atkins is telling us, right? Based on what they did this offseason, they said, well, we don't need to go get any big guys. We don't need to trade for Juan Soto. Yeah, they pushed for Ohtani. He's a different animal. He's a unicorn. Like, of course they're going to push for him and try their hardest, but they're not going to go get Matt Chapman. They're not going to go get Cody Bellinger. So they're not going to trade for Juan Soto. So they trust the guys they have now. So they also expect them to bounce back. Now, yes, the reality of the situation. Okay, what do we think is actually going to happen? I think you're right. They're going to probably squeak into the playoffs, but what are they going to do at that point? It's hard to predict that they're going to go and get a lot better because we don't know what they're going to do at the trade deadline. Because I really think they need to go make some sort of big splash at the trade deadline. Because, yeah, I hope that the pitching staff is healthy, but that's pretty hopeful, you know what I mean? Because we got really lucky last year and blessed with quite a healthy staff. You got to expect one of those guys to maybe go down with an injury, one of those guys to underperform, and maybe we have to go make a trade. Maybe we want to go add another big thumping bat in Atlanta. Maybe we see what it is, and we're like, okay, Vlad is really popping off. George is really popping off, but there's a dead hole at that third base bag. Let's go make a trade. So depending on that team, there could be a total second half team that we need to turn around.
Yeah, it's impossible to predict post-trade deadline, but I mean, just looking at the squad as a whole, and this is something that kind of blew my mind the other day. Somebody commented on one of our most recent videos, and they said, if you would have told me when Kevin Biggio and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette were coming up and making their debuts, right? Because we all remember the hype. We remember it was like the trifecta. It was Biggio, it was Guerrero, it was Bo Bichette.
Every MLB graphic had those guys with babies on them.
Yeah,
and wearing their
like
dad's jerseys.
This was the trio, and all of their fathers were elite in the MLB, and that meant that they were going to be elite in the MLB, and they were all on one team, and it was going to lead us to, phenomenal places. And this guy commented, he said, if you would have told me when those three guys debuted that we would have had zero postseason success up until this point, 5 years later, he said, I wouldn't believe you. And I was like, you know what?
You're right.
You're so right. I wouldn't have expected that either.
Bro, I was looking back at some of our old content, and one of our first trailers on this channel, I think I said it, I was like, 2024, Blue Jays will win a World Series. And I was like, holy shit, that's this year.
We're there.
That's this year.
Yeah.
And that was the expectation. It's like, we're going to gradually get better. We're going to make a playoff. We're going to maybe go to the ALCS in 2023. And then my expectation was then we go to the World Series. So when I was thinking about doing this podcast with you, I was like, am I thinking about the expectations from back in the day? Because those expectations were World Series this year.
Yeah.
But now it's a lot different. Now I'm thinking, damn, expectation, like, win a playoff series.
Totally.
Win a playoff series. Which just feels sad to say. I don't really see this team going on a deep World Series run this year.
Well, we're obviously just making this content, seeing what happened last year, and knowing that they haven't necessarily won a playoff game. Because the second that they do win a goddamn playoff game, I'm buying all the way in. They're going to the World Series.
Because how can we expect them to go to the World Series if they haven't even won a game in the playoffs?
It is very difficult, right? But I think it all starts with that confidence that you build in the regular season, and specifically from your own division, right? If you could potentially become a division winner, then that is just so much more confidence heading into the playoffs, where you now get home field advantage. You get all that different stuff, in your favor. And last year, they were just getting annihilated by the AL East, right? And I felt like the writing was kind of on the wall for the Toronto Blue Jays, being like, when you go up against a competitive team, because the AL East, they were all competitive, they just didn't stand up. 21-31. That is something. That is a reality that needs to change in 2024. And for me, I think that if you're Ross Atkins, and I think that if you're John Schneider, you can't have that happen again, because those statistics, if we finish the season, even if we finish with like 89 games again, if you're still getting dummied by your own division, that's when the upper management and Rogers goes, maybe we do need to make a change, because like we can't even compete in our own section right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, you have to beat the AL East teams to be a good team in the playoffs. Because if you can't beat, like, if we're always complaining, like, AL East is so hard. I want to be in an easier division so that we can go and win the division. Okay, well, what's going to happen when you go to the postseason? You're going to face all these AL East teams, so it doesn't matter. You have to learn to beat them. I think it's a great benefit that the Blue Jays get to face 13 games each against one of these AL East teams, because it trains you to learn how to beat them when it matters the most. And we didn't do that last year, and now you're seeing what happens this offseason. New York Yankees got significantly better in their pitching and their hitting. The Baltimore Orioles traded for Corbin Burns. They added in a great bullpen piece in Craig Kimbrell. So they got better in their pitching. So we had to still go out and we got to defeat them.
Yeah.
And then you're looking over Tampa Bay Rays, who could always be sneaky. Yeah, they traded away some guys. There's issues over there, but they're going to find a way to be pretty
coaching's always
sneaky.
Phenomenal there.
Exactly, right? So what's going to are we expecting them to just all of a sudden, beat them? That's tough to say.
What do you make of the Fangraphs projection? Because the Fangraphs projection had us at 83 wins, but they had us finishing 4th in the American League East division. And I understand that is within the range of outcomes, just because this is such it is so competitive, this division. So it is within the range of outcomes. But I think my bias is taken over here, and I'm saying I don't think that is going to happen. I am expecting the Toronto Blue Jays to do a little bit better than that.
Yeah, I don't really like their whole projection of wins. There's no way. I mean, maybe. There could be. There's a reality where this happens, but very unlikely that Yankees only end up with 88, 84, 84, 83, 80. Like, one of the best teams or one of the best divisions in baseball just can't do that unless we're all beating each other up. But, I mean, you saw them beat each other up last year, and look what happened. You're still going to have games outside of your division.
And here's the thing. We got our asses whooped 21-31, but still had 89 wins.
Exactly. You're going to get the wins outside of your division, absolutely. So I don't really care about that part. And what I care about is the 4th place. I mean, Rays over Orioles. Rays feel like they're going down just in terms of the personnel that kind of left their team in 2023, like Glasnow going, and I mean Wander Franco's not going to play baseball ever again. Like you still see those big impact players gone. You got to imagine that. Okay, well, that's going to hurt them a little bit, but you never know. They could still be sneaky. But second, I'd rather put Orioles up there. I think realistically, Blue Jays are going to be 3rd. And in terms of the wild card in the AL East, they're going to be 3rd, 2nd, kind of flirting with that all season long.
I do think that the Toronto Blue Jays reality is a little bit better than what Fangraphs is projecting it to be. But with all that being said, with the Toronto Blue Jays going out this offseason and bringing in a veteran in Justin Turner, bringing back Kevin Kiermaier, bringing in Yariel Rodriguez, and then really focusing this offseason on relying on the current talent, looking at that prospect pool, you're going to see some prospects come up. It's hard to predict what they're going to do, but you're going to see some prospects. And then also factoring in the fact that Matt Chapman's gone, Brandon Belt's gone, Jordan Hicks is gone. What is a realistic floor and what is a realistic ceiling for these Toronto Blue Jays in 2024?
Whoa! Time for your daily Betway breather. A quick reminder that the best place to bet is on Betway. Must be 19 years of age or older to play. In collaboration with iGaming Ontario, please bet responsibly. Now, back to the content.
Yeah, a realistic floor could literally be a just sub 500 team.
I was going to say like 78.
Yeah, 78. I could realistically see that. If the offense doesn't bounce back, okay, that's part of this reality. You get some injuries in your pitching staff, and pitching staff's going to carry you. I mean, look, our offense was doo-doo last year, let's face it, but the pitching was phenomenal, still carried us to 89 wins. But if you get some injuries or some underperformances by 2 or 3 guys in that rotation, yeah, and you still have the same lineup, it's going to be pretty brutal. You're going to see them be a sub-500 team.
Totally, dude. Because, again, we started this thing off, and I was saying that the pitching staff, I still believe that it is going to be good. Yeah. But if it is closer to the bottom half of that, top 10, for instance, if they were, 8th or 9th in the league, but the offense was still the way that they were last year, now you are looking at, an 80-win team, right?
Yeah,
they had to be a top 5, top 3 unit in the entire MLB even to make it into the playoffs, right? Yep. And it is really hard to do that year over year. So I could still see a reality where the pitching staff is good, just not necessarily as good as they were last year. And if the offense doesn't do what they need to do and doesn't pull their weight, then yeah, you are looking at a team that could be 78, 79, 80 wins. In terms of the ceiling, I mean, it does kind of feel like the sky's the limit here. It feels like any one of, maybe not any one, but a lot of those Toronto Blue Jays pitchers, they could win Cy Young. I could see reality where Kevin Gausman walks away with it. I could see reality where Alek Manoah comes back and he loses 40, 50 pounds in the offseason and revenge tour, and now he's Cy Young.
Yeah.
Or Jose Barrios, right? Yep. There is a lot of guys who could potentially do that. And then on the hitting side of things, I mean, we're kind of counting him out because he's getting older, but George Springer is still a guy. Bo Bichette,
A lot of ABs.
A lot of at-bats, and I mean, I still think that we haven't seen the best year from Bo Bichette yet.
Yeah,
And
entering their primes right now. Him
literally.
and Vlad.
Exactly, and we got to factor this in, too. Guerrero, I mean, he just had an arbitration case where they tried to take away $2 million. That should tell him everything he needs to know, that nothing is guaranteed in the MLB right now, and if you do want to get paid, this is the next 2 years to do that. So I could 100% see a reality where this lineup does bounce back, and if you get that pitching as well, I'm thinking that the ceiling could even be like 96 wins for this team.
The high ceiling reality is you win the AL East, right? Because if you roll out that pitching staff, which can be the best in the American League when they're all clicking, and that lineup with a MVP Vladdy, that's huge. And then George Springer, we're looking at an older podcast just yesterday, and he almost had 700 plate appearances.
Right.
Like if you had him batting back where he was when we first signed him, holy crap. I don't think he's going to ever do that. He'll give me something in terms of the OPS plus of like what Bo Bichette gave you last year. He could very well do that. Bo Bichette steps up another level. Dude, that would be a dangerous top 3.
Yeah.
And then if everyone just does their job below them, this lineup could be a top 5 lineup. And a top 5 lineup with a top 5 pitching staff, damn, that is, you're winning the AL East. And now my expectations at that point with them doing that is you got to go all the way, man.
Yeah.
You got to go all the way.
No, I completely agree, dude. And I think that's why right now, like, you're seeing the ceiling that we just went down. Ceiling on the floor, that's almost a difference of 20 games, basically. It is a massive difference. And I would argue that I do think that the reality of what's going to happen this season is probably going to be in between that. I think that if I had to bet it right now, Toronto Blue Jays, to me, they feel like a high 80 win team. 88 wins feels like a good number. Throwing that out there right now, just based off of what we've seen in this offseason, who is getting better, who they brought in, who they lost. I'm thinking that they absolutely could do better than that, and they probably do need to do better than that if they want to make a playoff run, even make the playoffs. But that feels to me like probably the closest thing to a reality right now that we can judge for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, I said it as well too. Yeah, that's kind of the reality I'm looking at, and that's my personal expectation. I expect them to be kind of exactly where they were. It felt like they plateaued last year, even a little bit lower. And based on the offseason and based on 6 WAR we got to make up, like even if they do make up all that WAR, you're kind of back in the exact same place you were. So, and I am expecting to get better. So, man, I think we're going to get just into the wild card. But that reality I kind of flirted with a little bit earlier of the potential of making some big splashes at the deadline, I think that's going to be the game-changing move. You really got to get some more personnel in there if these guys aren't popping off like crazy.
That's the thing, though. I mean, the only way that they're going to do that is that you prove it in the first 2-3 months of baseball. You got to show 100%. The management that, like, hey, if you go out and you get these guys, there's actually a chance that we could go all the way this year.
Absolutely.
And there wasn't really that last year. It kind of, and I feel like that's why they didn't make a whole lot of moves.
Exactly.
Because, even though we all wanted them to, I think the management saw the writing on the wall, which was, is this our year to ship off all these prospects?
Yeah.
Like, probably not, So if we want that to be the reality, then the first few months is going to be critical for these Toronto Blue Jays, folks. But let us know your thoughts about all this in the comments down below. What do you think the Toronto Blue Jays season is going to look like in 2024? And what is your projected win total for this team and where they finish in the American League East? Let us know down below.
Guys, and please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And $3 a month to become a Patreon member. Shout out and thank you to all of our current Patreon members and to our YouTube members as well. You guys are freaking awesome.
Thanks so much for watching.
And as always, go Jays, go!